Welcome to a session that is going to completely change the way that you look at building neuro-inclusive workplaces. And so today we have Tania at PegSquared, myself at Rufen and Exceptional Individuals. And if you are joining in live, then you will notice we have a mentee that we're going to be utilizing today. So feel free to go to menti.com and put the code 65673877 in there. Your sort of secondary tab, if you've got one, or your secondary device, and you'll be able to join in on today's session. Okay, so I've put it in the comments. If you are also here joining us live or on the replay, feel free to also tell us a bit about what you hope to get from today and where you are dialing in from. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of today. So this is the agenda and a few intros we're going to be doing in a second. Current reality check when it comes to neuro-inclusion. We're going to talk about some misconceptions. We're also going to talk about some hiring practices, retention strategies, and actionable steps for organizations. So if you, again, join by Menti, you can interact with us in a really psychologically safe space and way. So before I go with the questions, I'm going to introduce myself slightly. So I'm Ruth Allen from Exceptional Individuals. I'm a Chief Innovation Officer here. So I help support the team and everyone in the organization to innovate in a way that's going to help to leverage the way that neurodivergent and the neurodiversity space is really action throughout the world. And before I introduce amazing Tania, I just want to say hi to Hannah and Patricia as well from North Carolina, USA, and anyone else that's joining us. Feel free to tell us who you are. Tania Martin, please introduce yourself.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on today. So I am a neurodiversity consultant, predominantly working with organisations to help both educate but also action neurodiversity in the workplace. My background is I spent 20 years in corporate. I was actually the person responsible for the people process that when setting up EY's Neurodiverse Centre of Excellence. So I've lived and breathed building a neurodivergent team within a large organisation and the challenges that brings, everything from how we recruit all the way through to promotion and progression. So it was an incredibly interesting space to sit in terms of learning about neurodiversity. I had the most amazing privileged role of basically 100% of my time was on neurodiversity in the workplace within a large organisation. So I felt incredibly lucky to have had that opportunity. Prior to that, I've led big teams. I spent most of my time doing transformation, people and technology projects within large organisations, but started in recruitment. So I had a bit of a squiggly career, as we like to call it. And I also was diagnosed myself with ADHD back in 2022. So lived experience as well as the great professional experience that I have had.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today, Tania. So all of us here in a space, maybe we are neurodivergent ourselves. I'm neurodivergent too, dyslexic, dyspraxic, ADHD, and autism, as well as OCD. And so thank you, Patricia, Elizabeth, Rahu, I hope that's the name right, Gillian and Hannah for joining us and saying where you are from. We have got a mixed bag of people today from all over the world. So thank you so much for joining us today. And so we want to know what's going to make this session for you as impactful as possible. So let us know in the chat using our StreamYard. We're also going to go into Menti now, and we're going to really ask a really simple but important question. When you hear neuro-inclusive workplace, what's the first challenge that comes to mind? So you're going to go on to Menti, you're going to put the code 65673877, and you're going to write down what's the first challenge that comes to mind when you hear the term, the word, neuro-inclusive workplace? This is a psychologically safe space, so make sure that you are very real and very transparent about what that means for you. While you're doing that, I'm going to go into the chat. Hey, Stephen from Birmingham, in the UK, and fellow dyspraxic as well. So while we've also got the team in the backstage as well from Exceptional Individuals, who helps neurodivergent individuals in the workplace, in the background, saying hi to you as well. So feel free to say hi back. Okay, so far we have the first challenge being reasonable adjustments, misunderstanding and barriers. Anything else that comes to mind? I've got 2 out of 21 registered on Menti. I want more. I want at least 80% of those people sharing. Okay, so we've got equity is a challenge, organization, compassion, safety, consistency, reassurance. We got stuff around hybrid working, unlikely to be that good. That's the one that we can relate to. We've got double empathy problems. We've got things around neuro washing. It's a new term I've not heard, but I like it, and I want you to explain a bit more about that. We've also got pieces around adaptability. We've got 10 people so far, so I know some of you are doing double work, so thank you for that. But if those 23 on Menti can also share what else, that would be great. We want to make this a collaborative conversation. We've got discrimination. We have time for open conversation, which is an important piece, right? So the link from Menti, I'm going to drop it into the chat again. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. But if you go to menti.com, because if you can't see the link, and put 65673877 in, you'll be able to join us via Menti. We've got 27 so far via Menti, sharing with us. When you hear the word, the term neuro-inclusive workplace, the first challenge that comes to mind. Okay, so 30. Great. I'm seeing 17 of you so far sharing. Yeah, thumbs up as soon as you're in. Is it inclusive to all? It's a good question. It's a good challenge as well that comes up. Unwritten rules. Yes, when they're not explicit, you've got ambiguity that comes up, right? No one wants that. We've got trust. That's a challenge as well. Exclusion. Oh, I love these. So thank you so much for sharing so far. Continue to share, because we've got some other questions that are going to come up too. And just to check in, these are challenges that are exactly why we need to move beyond awareness to action, right? So thank you. Continue to share. And we are going to be sharing this replay is going to be available for you for a lifetime. So feel free to keep on sharing. Now, I'm going to go on to the next question in 10 seconds so that you've got time. Miscommunication, reasonable adjustments. Okay, 22 out of the 30 plus. So let's go. So when building a neuro-inclusive workplace, which is typically the biggest initial challenge? So I've asked you for the challenge full stop. Now I want to know the biggest initial challenge. Thank you, Helena. Unclear expectations, definitely. Okay. I want to know, just getting a temperature check of the room. What is the biggest initial challenge? The first challenge that comes up. This is really great info, because this is also educating people, organizations around the frustrations, right? So let's share that. For joining us just now, I'll put the Menti in the chat again for you to join in and share your insights. We have 52 live with us, probably include myself and Tania and the team, but we also have 30 plus on Menti. So the more you are on Menti, the more likely you're going to be able to see your answers on the screen. So far we have changing existing culture and mindsets as the first initial biggest challenge. Okay. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. looks like that is the top one. And then getting leadership buy-in second, and understanding, and then knowing where to start practically and setting measurable goals and outcomes as well. Okay. So the majority of us are in agreement around the order. So let's, Tania, before we move on to the next slide, is this what you're also encountering in your space?
Yes, I think, do you want me to elaborate on the why?
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, no, so absolutely it is a challenge to get people to even have the neurodiversity conversation. Let's be really honest about this. And I was doing some research yesterday, and there was a really interesting statistic that jumped out at me. So 51% of leaders, so senior manager and above, are Generation X, so my generation. And our generation, neurodiversity was not something that was positive. It was incredibly negative. It was something we would hide, we would mask, we didn't want to talk about. It was an area that wasn't a positive experience for us. So it was really interesting seeing everybody's responses to begin with, because they were incredibly negative in terms of how you believe neuro-inclusion in the workplace is at the moment. And I get that. But let's think about that. 51% of our leaders see neurodiversity as something that is a deficit as opposed to a difference, which is what the new generations that are coming through see it as. So we already have a huge hurdle that we have to overcome. So if you think about, those leaders are the ones that are setting company culture, tone from the top. They are the ones that are investing in what is strategically important. They are the ones that are making the decisions as to whether or not this is a priority for an organization, yet they don't really understand it. They don't understand what it is, why we're talking about it, why are we suddenly talking about it now. And what's really interesting is that those that are doing something in this space, those leaders that are embracing neuro-inclusion, and we're doing it in pockets, we're not doing it across an organization, they tend to be led by a person who has lived experience themselves or has a personal connection to neurodiversity. So what we're finding is there's this thing called people want to leave a legacy behind, and leaders in roles who suddenly go, right, actually, I want my children to work in an environment where it is neuro-inclusive. Those are the leaders that are trying to make the difference. But the challenge we have is exactly right. It's about re-educating. It is about getting people to engage with this topic that actually naturally they feel incredibly uncomfortable with.
Fantastic. And I've been sharing the comments, and everyone is in agreement around the piece, right? The piece around culture and mindset being such an important piece. And yeah, I totally agree around the subset of culture and mindset, Stephen, as well. And, you know, if without buy-in, without somebody driving change who's in power to be able to actually implement, it's very challenging to make those changes. So thank you, Tania. Thank you for the rest of the team here in the chat who are sharing their amazing insights. So let me go on to our next question. True or false? And we know the answer to this, but we just want to make it super clear. Once you've done your diversity awareness training, you've built an inclusive workplace. Am I being a bit facetious here? Okay, so answer. We just want it to be very clear. We want it to be very clear. Okay, so far, we have 11 false, 14 false. I want this. I want to make it clear, because I don't want to be singing from my own hymn sheet. Once you've done neurodiversity awareness training, you've built an inclusive workplace. True or false? Every 41 people on Menti, you should be saying your answer right now. It's literally a click of a button. Okay. we've got loads to get through, so I'm going to go through some of these slides more quicker in a second. So you've got literally 10 more seconds before I move on and address this one as well. False, absolutely, Laura, false. Just to reiterate, there is this piece around understood by government as well. Going back to that previous slide too. 31 false. Come on, you know the answer. Put it in. We have 32 out of the 41. And we have 55 live. So thank you for the engagement on Menti as well. It is false. Once you've done neurodiversity awareness training, you've done neurodiversity awareness training. That's it. You've just done it. There's no clear measurement of actually change in culture. There's no clear measurement of change in outcomes and impact. And so an inclusive workplace actually has to be from end to end. And it's an ongoing piece. So even if you do training once a year, 3 times a year, 7 times a year, 20 times a year, that doesn't mean that you've got an inclusive workplace. There has to be some measurable pieces, which we're going to be talking about soon. Okay, so rank these leadership buy-in challenges by difficulty in your experience. I know it might sound like it's a repetitive question, but I wanted you to do it in a level of ratings because we want to see where you're at as well. Okay, and I'm going to go to the chat while you are doing that. And again, check the Menti, go on Menti. If you haven't already, the link is in the chat. And I'm going to go through the comments and I'm going to see what we have been saying here. I get trouble for calling out negative behaviors if they demonstrate the negative behaviors are allowed to slide. Yeah, we need to have consequences as well for behaviors too, right? Charlie says, I found that even when there is leadership buy-in, there is still a lack of understanding and willingness to invest strategically and spend time and effort in it and not leave it up to ND to drive the change. Yes, that emotional labor that we as neurodivergent individuals have to take on is something we want to reduce. We want advocates and allies in the space as well to help support us. And then we've got, I find that especially in social work management is dire, despite me self-diagnosing a few of them very frustrating. We feel your frustration through the screen, Helen, we get it. We are there with you. And then I'm just going to go through this one. It's going to take up a bit of the screen, right? The real life impact of living whilst being neurospicy isn't understood, and I find a lot is because they can't see our struggles. I share my lived experience a lot and have found it helps people understand a bit better. However, the amount of managers I come across that simply don't want to learn is shocking. And you can see by the emojis that people are there with you, Ria. Yep, absolutely. I just Googled neurowashing, not come across the word before. Neurodiversity training is neurowashing most of the time. Controversial, but yes, we've got to call it out as well. We have to call out things that just don't make an impact. And so, yes. Okay, so ranking these leadership buy-in challenges by difficulty in your experience is getting initial leadership attention, sustaining long-term commitment, moving from awareness to budget allocation. It's a good one. We know put your money where your mouth is, and then getting middle management on board and measuring and proving return on investment is actually lost. So, just quickly, Tania, would you be able to share about these challenges as well? Just maybe around one thing that people can do to get initial leadership attention. Just one thing.
The one thing that they should be focused on is the business reasons as to why this is important, because the challenge we've got with neurodiversity is it tends to fall into the HR compliance bucket. And actually there's some genuine business reasons as to why a diverse workforce is good for the bottom line. So everything from innovation and creativity. If you have a diverse team, you get better ideas, better results, and there is data that relates to that and backs that up. Productivity statistics, exist around neurodiversity and having diverse teams. Retention statistics, if you get this right, retention goes up. Talent attraction as well. So people join organisations if there's a focus on neurodiversity because it says something about the culture of that organisation. So yeah, focus on the why, as opposed to it being a negative. We need help. Let's change the narrative to a this is actually good for business if we focus on this.
Fantastic, thank you. So that data, that why behind a piece, going back to the business outcomes. Okay, fantastic. So thank you all for sharing. Now let's talk about barriers. I know there's quite a few here. It's not a comprehensive list. We can only fit so many here, but I want to know which hiring practices do you think create the biggest barriers for neurodivergent candidates? Put in your insights. Okay, and I am going to, while you're doing that, while the 43 people on Mentee share their insights, their lived experience, their expertise, I'm going to go back into the comments and see what the rest of you are saying. Studies that show a neurospicy colleague who is in a supportive environment will be at least 30% more productive. The amount of places saying they're struggling to recruit or retain, surely you'd ensure supportive and inclusive environments and use our strengths. Thank you. We are. We've also got Helen, who says it's so clear as day to me that benefits it has, and again, social care is known for staff and the revolving door, but we could retain staff if only they focus on inclusion. Thank you, Helen. I'm just going to go to our 29 out of 43 people have said so far, when it comes to the biggest barriers for neurodivergent candidates, we've got traditional interview formats, panels, high pressure, job descriptions with unnecessary requirements, lack of alternative assessment methods, unconscious bias in screening, and unclear application processes. All of the above are problematic. So if you are a hiring manager, you work in HR, and you are doing any of these, 26 people are saying all of these are problematic, and the rest are saying all of the other pieces are not great either. Okay, great, because it's not an issue. Diversity in general is a strength. Okay, let's get moving. I know we've got this Q&A piece. We're nearly halfway through, so I want to make sure we are focusing on some of the pieces here. And I'm going to guess this part is 50-50 to an extent for some. I know initially it might be 50-50, but actually long-term sustainable wise, in terms of sustainable income for neurodivergent individuals, retaining, in my experience, is harder because that is where the work comes in. Okay. So I'm going to go back into the chat while you answer this question around attracting neurodivergent talent. What's harder, attracting neurodivergent talent or retaining them once hired? Here. So while we're waiting for some more responses, I'm going to ask Tania a question around this one. Right? When it comes to attraction versus retention, and this poll, obviously we've seen a lot of retention piece, what's your experience with helping clients think about the whole hiring journey rather than just the recruitment piece?
So I think the challenge organisations have is that the employee life cycle as a whole isn't owned by a single person. So what you're having to do is there are so many different touch points across that employee life cycle. And I think this is where the work that I did in the Neurodiverse Centre of Excellence was really interesting, because I did manage the whole process. So end to end. So I was having to think about how our current processes within EY were impacting my neurodivergent team and what changes we needed to make, if we need to make any at all. And what was really interesting was we then provided that feedback back to those teams in terms of saying, this doesn't work from a neuro-inclusive perspective. So it is incredibly hard to drive neuro-inclusivity across that employee life cycle if you are not picking up each individual team in order to do that. The one thing that is that does bridge both recruitment and retention is this concept of psychological safety. And you can start building that from day one. So you can start building that from the day that a person looks at your website and goes, do you know what? I can see that they have people who are neurodivergent and they are thriving in this organization. You can prove that throughout the recruitment process. You don't forget about it when you've offered them the job, because ultimately it's that period of time where there's a lot of anxiety before they start, where you need to continue building that psychological safety. And then once they get into a team, that relationship with their line manager is incredibly important. So I think that underpins it, and creating that is incredibly essential for an organization to do. But yeah, in terms of how you do it end to end, you've got to get those that are responsible for the parts of the process engaged in neurodiversity and understanding it, and understanding it from the neurodivergent individual's perspective, as opposed to them just putting their own spin on it.
Include us, nothing without us, right?
Absolutely.
That piece around that, the employee life cycle as well, and having everybody involved in it, not just like, okay, hiring managers have your part and then we won't involve you in the rest of the infrastructure. I think is you're doing a disservice to the whole process, and you're losing a lot of money as well when you talk about businesses, because you're not honoring the life cycle. You're not even looking at you're looking at the awareness, but you're not looking at the acceptance piece, and you're not looking at the advancements piece. And so that's a challenge, right? So thank you all. Thank you, Tania. I'm just going to go into the chat. Tick boxing organizations look attractive, and really it's just been a tick box, and once it's been completed, it isn't reflected on. There's a piece there as well, right? Sometimes when there's not that full understanding and that cycle, it can cause those challenges. So thank you for the piece around giving us your insights around what is harder. And obviously every organization is different. So attracting might be harder for some, retaining is harder for others, but honoring that retention can be the challenge mostly. I'm going to do this question, but then I'm going to probably skip a few questions because I know when you're halfway through and I want to get to the Q&A part, but this is around which approach typically creates more sustainable neuro-inclusion. And obviously, tongue-in-cheek here with some of these questions. Focus on quick, visible wins first, implement comprehensive systematic change, start with policy changes, then culture, and then begin with individual accommodations. What's your insights? What's your take? Is there a right answer? Is it a combination? Is it just one? What's going to help? While you're doing that, I am going to go back into the chat. Around masking. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing that. And yeah, when you don't address the elements of psychological safety and you have that in place on an ongoing basis, that having brave psychological spaces, the masking is going to be the byproduct of that. And so without that being addressed, anxiety and depression will come into play as well. Okay, we are going to go into the response here around systematic change being the top thing first, and then policy changes, and then culture is second, individual accommodations is third, and quick visible wins, surprise surprise, isn't the things that people think are going to create sustainable. The question is around sustainable neuro-inclusion, so that long-term piece. Okay.
What's really interesting about that answer is that Actually, most organisations are begin with individual accommodations, and very few are doing systematic change.
Yeah.
The opposite of what's needed.
Exactly. I mean, you make a good point around the policies. If it's a policy as well, right, there's a piece around, oh, I know it's part of the policy, I'm going to adhere to this piece. If there's this systematic change piece, it's that they have to work hand in hand, but definitely those quick visible wins first can sometimes look like tick box exercises, and then they're not necessarily sustainable either because they're quick and haven't been thought through the whole employee life cycle. I'm going to go to the chat, see what you're saying while I go through that. I'm going to quickly go through some of these questions and see which ones we should be focusing on because of the time. Okay, we've got a little bit of time, so we're just going to do quick fire rounds of questions. That means you're going to get your device out or tab, secondary tab, and we're going to give 30 seconds for each question, and we're going to go through them, and then we're going to see which ones are the most interesting, and Tania's going to give some insights. So if you had to organize neuro-inclusion transformation into key areas, which one would be the most crucial? I know this is going to sit well with those of us who love fast-paced, might not sit well with those of us that need a bit of time for processing. So I do apologize, but I just want to get through some of this. So if you want to organize, if you had to organize neuro-inclusion transformation into key areas, which would be the most crucial? Maybe I should have done it another way, but hindsight, eh? Awareness, acceptance, and advancement. We have, I like the 3 A's because we created it at EI just as a really quick way to kind of know where you are at. We've got the understanding environment opportunity piece. We have training, policies, accommodation, recruitment, retention, and the leadership culture. Feel free to use the chat if you are like, there's other things here that you've missed. Let's put that in there. You've got 10 more seconds to answer this, and then we're going to move on. And I'm going to go back to the most juiciest ones that I've answered from the rest of the group, so that we can get through this and make sure that we are really getting into the meat and potatoes of this discussion. So far, organized neuro-inclusion transformation key areas, we have awareness, acceptance, and advancement. That's crucial. Which level is typically hardest to embed neuro-inclusion into? Senior, middle management, team level, day-to-day, or all interconnected? You have 30 seconds. Go, go, go. I'm going to go into this chat. Good point, Vicky. Thank you for sharing. I still believe that accommodations, individual accommodations are still quite key. But again, it's that piece around where does it fit in? How do you prioritize this? Workplace needs assessments are really helpful and impactful. Want to go beyond acceptance, actually appreciating neurodivergence as well. Okay, 10 more seconds, which is typically the hardest to embed, right? Okay, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1. Next question. Which type of real-world example will be most valuable for you today? Is it going to be around small organizations, large enterprises, hiring-specific process overhaul, cultural change initiatives, case studies, or quick wins and immediate implementation stories? Which one's going to be the most helpful? And feel free to use the chat. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds. We are doing the fast pace because we're going to get through the Q&A soon. 10 more seconds. Cultural change initiatives, case studies. Tania, feel free to be get ready for that because that seems to be the most popular piece for today. Okay. And okay. We all know, I want you to complete this in a sentence. I'll give you a few more seconds for this. We all know our neuro-inclusion efforts are working when we can measure. Write it in a sentence. Hopefully you can write in a sentence and it's working. Feel free to use the chat on whatever platform you're utilizing, and I will use that as one of the sentences, or use Menti as an alternative. Okay, we'll know our neuro-inclusion efforts are working when we can measure the happiness levels is one thing. We might focus on this, to be fair, Tanya. This one and the other one's quite interesting just in terms of the cultural case studies. The success of our neurodivergent clients. Employee reporting sense of belonging. I love belonging. I love accessibility as well. That piece definitely needs to be measured as well. ND employees' retention satisfaction levels. Love that. How many staff have left in certain time frames and what's said in supervision. Positive employee satisfaction in this area. Satisfaction. Reduced distress amongst ND staff. Employee satisfaction. Psychological safety of all employees. You need to constantly ask for help, support, standard celebration of diversity of thought, well-being across all staff, psychological safety, changes of all levels, psychological safety, safe staff capacity to handle the job we signed up to, personal examples, productivity of neurodiverse employees. So yeah, psychological safety from an intersectional lens as well, right? One person's psychological safety will look different to somebody else's. So yes, that measurement is key. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute or so, because I know only 16 of you out of the 46 on here have replied, and I want to make sure that we're honouring. We'll know our neuro-inclusion efforts are working when we can measure what? We have retention as well as a measure. Not feeling like you always have to advocate for yourself is a measure as well. Feeling comfortable being yourself. So truly showing up, being able to show up authentically in the workplace. Less spikes in rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, huge topic in ND colleagues as well. Improve productivity for all. Okay, and then we have, how many of you? 19, and some of you in the chat. So let's keep going. I'm going to give you another minute or so. Really great work, everyone. Thank you all for sharing. Growth opportunities, cultural change in organisation, all people being able to be themselves at work, but are not feeling burnt out in a role in a few years. Yes, let's take a deep breath for that. We got retention again. Okay, we have many things. Again, you're going to have access to this recording, so you can go back and re-watch this, take some of this stuff away, implement as well. Okay, I'm going to give you 20 more seconds because 20 of you have replied out of the 46. And we know that there's more of you. 10, 9, 8. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I feel like we could have this conversation as an all-day thing, Tanya. Like this is such a deep topic, right? Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Okay. The awareness, safety, and satisfaction of any individuals and maybe the organisation begins to look at other areas that be systematically wrong from the beginning. Okay, fantastic. Yes, the recording is there. It's live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So you will get a recording of this. You don't have to wait for anyone to send you the recording after it's finished. So I know it's fast-paced. Yeah, we could be here for months. It is an ongoing piece. I completely agree. There is so much to unpack. We could be here for months, but today is a 60-minute session, and so it's on YouTube. Yeah, it's on YouTube. Okay. I wanted to make it easy for you to access whenever you need to. So you'll be able to pause me, who goes at 900 miles per hour, whenever you need to. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next slide so that you can ask that one burning question to Tanya and the rest of the team here at BI. Because I know it's fast-paced, and I did say it's fast-paced, but we have literally like 21 minutes left. So if you can ask that one burning question that perhaps you haven't asked yet, feel free to put that in 20 or in the chat. Thank you for the reminder about the rewatching of full version, which is on YouTube. which is on our LinkedIn, which is on our Facebook. We are on many different platforms, and you can watch a plethora of previous sessions that we have done on our YouTube. We have quite a few subscribers, but if you're not subscribed already, subscribe. It's going to be helpful for you. So, any questions, Tania, which we will get to. Before we get to the Q&A, I know you might answer some of these in the Q&A, so feel free to expand, but perhaps feel free to pick maybe 2 or 3 you can answer, not as in depth because we haven't got the time, but in a way that still honors the question and validates the experience. So pick 2 or 3 of the ones that feel the most impactful for the audience. We will get to those in a second. I'm going to give you 20 more seconds to ask your question, and then we will ask those before we go onto the Q&A piece. Yes, okay. Okay, so those of you that might have, if you have already joined via Eventbrite and you said you wanted a certificate and that was part of the thing that you opted into, you will get that at the end of the session. April has shared our YouTube channel as well. Thank you for doing that. So hopefully you can see that, Gillian, as well. And again, I'm going to give you 10 more seconds before we ask Tania to answer maybe 2 of these questions before we get into the Q&A. We are going to be asking Tania to come back as well in a future session, because we know this is quite short, 60 minutes. You can't do it justice. We could be here all for months, for a year, but we want to go beyond just having conversations, and we want to see the implementation, right? There's no transformation without implementation, just from information. So we want to make sure as well. Question here as well. And any question that we can't answer live, we will go back and we will give you a special doc that might help you answer some of these questions too. Okay, over to you, Tania. Which ones are you choosing to answer? So I'm going to put down as well a little bit, sorry, so you can see all of them.
There's so many. I just want to pick up on the boredom burnout that somebody just mentioned. This is absolutely a thing. And I don't think people who are not neurodivergent, who don't experience this, realize just how incredibly challenging it is. And one of the things we implemented within my team was a boredom bucket. Okay, so what we did is, in that boredom bucket, we had lists of activities that you could pick up and put down again. And when you were in a period of downtime, you were able to go into the boredom bucket and pick something out of it and go, right, I'm just going to work on this for a day or a week or a few hours, and then you could put it back into the boredom bucket and come back to it. But it's absolutely 100%. I've worked with a team where that has been a thing, and it's incredibly challenging. So why is it so difficult to be done? We are having to re-educate. So neurodiversity is really, really interesting in the DEI space, because it is unlike any other DEI pillar. If we say, right, we're going to focus on women, what we're doing is we're going out, we're attracting more women, we're making them come into the workforce, we're hoping to promote them, to progress them, etc. When you are talking about neurodiversity, you're talking about the brain. And what you're not just saying is, how do we attract and retain people who are neurodivergent? We're having to say, how do we attract them, retain them, and set the environment up so that it works for their style of processing information, for their style of communicating. So it's an incredibly different conundrum. And there is so much co-occurrence between different neurodivergent conditions. We can't take this blanket approach in terms of, right, we want to hire 5 people with ADHD. We're going to give them all of these adjustments because that's what people with ADHD need. We have to treat everybody as an individual. One thing I will say, and this plays into those that are potentially, there was a question around reasonable adjustments. I get asked a lot at the moment around self-advocacy. And the reason why I'm being asked that question by organisations is because the speed at which it takes to change an organisation is not quick. It is incredibly difficult to make change within a large organisation. So whilst we are sat here going, we're here already, we need help, you're not doing things quick enough, what can we do to help ourselves? So start to think about, and either if you've got access to coaching or someone that can potentially help you do this, what are your strengths? What are the things that light you up during the day? Make a list, have a piece of paper on your desk and have love it, like it, can do. And then every time you're doing a task, just put it into one of those columns and you'll really soon see what are the things that you actually really love to do. And then in that can do column, start to think about, actually, I am struggling with that. Why am I struggling with that? What might help? And we've got to remember with reasonable adjustments is that a lot of things that help people who are neurodivergent are actually ways of working. Yes, absolutely, there's technologies that can help. We can think about desk space, and we can think about sensory challenges, and we can think about flexible working. But a lot of the challenges people who are neurodivergent have are actually around, okay, I've just left a meeting, I haven't had the actions and nobody's going to send those to me and I need them. So what can you do in order to ensure you actually start to get those actions? So that was two. Is there any? Should I? So I actually.
So before we got someone, there's loads of questions, but I'm just going to go into the bit around
cultural change.
Yeah. So let me just go to the.
So there was a cultural change case study piece I just wrote down here that I'm more than happy to share a little bit about what happened at EY, and because they actually did this really well, and I don't think they did it really well on purpose, and which was interesting. So when the Neurodiverse Centre of Excellence was announced, it was incredibly visible internally and externally. So we were talking about what we were doing. It was all over LinkedIn. It was in the press. Internally, there was a huge amount of PR, I guess, around the subject of what we were doing. And with that came great responsibility as well, having to talk about it and be the face of that to some degree. What we did is, we had senior sponsorship. So we had incredibly senior sponsorship from somebody who sat top level of the organisation, who was behind what we were doing. We were really clear on why we were doing it. So we were really clear it was not only the right thing to be doing, but we also saw the business benefits to doing it as well. So it wasn't just the social reasons, it was bigger than that. So we were really clear on why. We got really clear on our language. So when we talked about neurodiversity at EY, neurodiversity, neurodivergent, neurotypical, the narrative around that, so the strengths-based narrative as opposed to a deficit-based narrative. So we're really clear on the what it was and the why we were doing it. And then what we did is we went out and we spoke to anybody that would listen. So we were in team meetings, community events, with our clients, conferences, wherever we could talk about it, we talked about it. Sorry. And what that did was the awareness levels around neurodiversity went up really, really quickly. Our community grew really, really quickly. So our community went from 150 people to 2,000 people in 2 years. And that was simply because there was a focus on what we were doing, and we were talking about it, and people started to get interested, and people started to put their hands up and say, actually, we're here already, we need some support, and that community therefore provided that support for them. So I think that just shows that evolution from having never spoken about neurodiversity to suddenly having this organisation where neurodiversity was a topic of conversation, and as a result, change could happen from there. They're not perfect, they've still not got it right, they'll say that themselves, but at least they're on their way. Sorry, EY is one of the big four, so it's one of the largest global accountancy firms in the world. There's PwC, EY, KPMG, and Deloitte are the big four. So we employ about, I don't work there anymore, but when I did, there was about 20,000 people in the UK that work for EY.
So EY, Ernst & Young, just for the shorthand. So thank you so much, Tania. And we're going to get into the Q&A. And there's been so many great questions in here. And the team at Exceptional Individuals will go back and answer these questions, especially around reasonable adjustments, because we actually help support people. We deliver coaching, we deliver workplace training, and we recommend tech, and we even do co-coaching as well and other solutions too. So we will come back to some of those that have questions that are around those, and any other things that we can definitely answer around the impact that we've done in the sort of last 10 years as an organization. But let's get into the Q&A piece, and I might go back to some of these questions again, to be fair, because they are really great questions, just to expand on them. But building on sort of those practical pieces around, like you mentioned, the why, the strengths-based narrative, speaking to anyone that would listen. When you think about the organizations doing digital transformation, they seem to excel at sort of neuro-inclusion too, because, you know, system thinking, personalization at scale. Are we missing an opportunity to integrate transformational work streams like technology when it comes to neuro-inclusion?
So when I saw this question, it made me smile, because there was a piece of research done at the start of last year around technology specifically. And the number of people, so we say 1 in 5 people are neurodivergent, that's the estimate, 1 in 5 to 1 in 7. But the amount of people that came back in the tech space that were neurodivergent was over 50% ticked the box for neurodiversity. So what's really interesting, and you know, the technology space, they do this really well. So it was the SAPs, it was the Microsoft, it was those organizations that are really leading the way in terms of neuro-inclusion. And there's a reason for that. It's because a lot of them are neurodivergent. So it's a lot easier to build a neuro-inclusive workplace when you are neurodivergent yourself and you understand some of the challenges. So, and also, if you think about in the tech space, the skills that they need, you need those that are good at solving problems and innovation and creativity and everything else, and then you need those that are in the detail. So it naturally aligns to neurodivergent spiky profiles as well. So the integration opportunities, I actually think there's a lot we can learn from tech. Other organizations can learn from tech in terms of what they've done and how they've done it. So, and I know some of that information is out there already. But yeah, I think there's a reason why they're good at it, and it's because they have large neurodivergent teams.
Amazing. So yes, you know, tech-wise, definitely feel like the AI has transformed the way that I work, and I know that the clients that we support also have seen a big shift in that. But as we wrap up, before we ask the audience some final questions, we've seen lots of organizations starting to influence their entire supply chains around neuro-inclusion practices, requiring suppliers to demonstrate cognitive diversity as well. Do you see this becoming a broader requirement, and how might that shift our approach to implementation as well?
So I think this is a really interesting question, and I think let's think about this in terms of recruitment supply chains. Okay, so an organization can focus on their recruitment process. They can make it as inclusive as possible, But what happens if the suppliers to the organization aren't embedding the same neuro-inclusive practices? And it's like I've dealt with or spoken to a number of recruitment agencies or consultancies, and they are saying we've got more candidates actually putting I have ADHD on my CV, but how are they actually being treated as a result of putting that on their CV? How are the recruitment consultancies using them? So I think there is definitely a question mark for organizations to start thinking about, right, if I am embedding neuro-inclusion, if I am taking this seriously as an organization, how do we ensure that the suppliers that we are using are as serious about neuro-inclusion as we are? I would say we're probably quite a long way off this from what I've seen. But I have spoken to organisations that are asking those questions. I just think sometimes they find it very difficult to know where to start.
So there's lots of work definitely to be done. Yeah, no, we've been talking for about an hour, so I totally get. Yeah, we want to ask you more questions, but we also are aware of time. We've got 5 minutes, so just to kind of get your insights, audience, tell us how confident you feel about implementing your inclusive practices in your own workplace, because this is one of the reasons why PegSquared and exceptional individuals exist, right? And we're here to support, but we want to know how confident you are just from hearing today's session, and we can see where you are at. So feel free to, again, go back onto menti.com, use that code 65673877, because we want to know the baseline of where you're at. How confident are you at implementing your inclusive practices into your workplace? Remember, we talked about already the end-to-end process needed from attraction to all the way up to advancement of people's careers and that talent pipeline. So you can implement some practices, but we need a whole collaborative approach as well. Okay, so give me 5 more seconds. I know we've got 4 minutes left, because I've got a few more questions, and then we are wrapping up. And then Tania's going to tell us a little bit more about how they can connect. Also, if you are here live, I want you to put in your LinkedIn profile so that we can follow you or follow each other and connect for further. So put in your LinkedIn into the chat. The only way we are going to really support each other is by connecting, collaborating, and we can't do that without going beyond these conversations. So put your LinkedIn in the chat, and so people can connect with you, support you, and move forward. Okay, so thank you for sharing that in the Menti. I'm going to go to this question. Access one action. What's one action you're going to commit to taking back to your organization? Assess your current state honestly. Move beyond awareness training to practical implementation. Start measuring your inclusion outcomes. Create a systematic transformation plan, or connect with experts like myself and Tania and EI as an example. Which one are you going to be doing? One action, just one. Put it in the Menti. Oh, in the chat. Again, put your LinkedIn there as well. We want, and anyone from Jess, Tania, and Leo, Stefan, or Stephen, thank you for sharing your LinkedIn. Put them all in the chat. We want to make sure we're connecting with you. Thank you, Banja. What are you going to be doing next? Connecting with exceptional individuals, connecting with PegSquared, getting coaching, training, workplace needs assessments, we've delivered over millions of pounds worth of access to work support, and also helped people get funding. So again, put in your answer of what you're going to do next. What's that one action? One action. Put your LinkedIn in the chat. And then last but not least, we want to make sure we are really focusing on neuro-inclusion topics that matter. So put in your rank of what you want to see next. What should we be building next for you all? Rank it in order. We are coming to 1 minute. Thank you all for sharing your LinkedIn. Jade, Kirsty, April, Gillian, all of you as well. And thank you for ranking your interest in the next level neuro-inclusion topic. If you haven't put your LinkedIn, put it in the chat. Put mine in as well. So far, we have comprehensive transformation frameworks. I love that. It's one of my favorite topics. Creating sustainable organizational change, advanced implementation strategies, leadership development for neuro-inclusion, and return on investment measurements as well. Okay, great. We are at time. We have a minute left. I'm going to honor you and say if you have to go, and that is completely fine. Keep on ranking, telling us what you want to see next. We have 9 out of the 40 plus people who've told us what's important for them. Great. And keep on putting your LinkedIn in there as well. Tanya, was there any other questions that you could possibly answer, please, pretty please, before you head off, that might help the audience as well?
I'm going to say one last thing. If you are in an organisation and you have the ability to sway this in any way possible, data. Please start collecting neurodiversity data. We can't measure ROI without it. So all of those topics that came up about, we want to see, like, are people who are neurodivergent happy in the workforce? If we haven't got the data, we can't measure it. So organisations don't do it well. But more importantly, with AI using data to start making HR decisions, if we're not capturing neurodiversity data, we are going to stay hidden. So that would be my final point, and my soapbox that I will now get off about data.
Stay on it. Data is an important piece. It helps to make informed decisions for people, the CEOs and the leaders in the organization. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Tanya. Can everyone just say thanks to Tanya and the Exceptional Individuals team, who are also in the chat as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your insights and your invaluable experience and expertise. Again, connect with Tanya via LinkedIn. We are going to invite PegSquared to come back as well at a later date as well. And you will be able to watch the replay to this. But thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you all. Just in the chat to say thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank yourself for taking your 60 minutes as well. Appreciate you all. Thank you. I'm going to end the stream in a couple of seconds, but I appreciate you all joining live, watching the replay, shouting us out, shouting out PegSquared, shouting out Exceptional Individuals and all the team as well. And we will see you hopefully this time next week. Thanks all again.